Good afternoon and welcome to today's seminar, Heat and Health Co-Producing Solutions for Passive Cooling in Self-Built Housing. My name is Ellen Meter, and I'm the new Managing Director for the Center for Global Health Equity, and I'm delighted to facilitate the seminar today. Each year our seminar series has a theme, and this year we are focusing on climate, vulnerability, and health. This is our third of 4 seminars in the series, and you can find past presentations on our website, as well as information about our communities of practice, such as our Climate Vulnerability and Health Challenge Group. This group explores how environmental, societal, and health factors are connected and how they impact one another. I'd like to welcome all of you, our audience, who are joining us today. We have faculty, staff, students, and alumni from the University of Michigan, faculty, staff, and students from other universities, and a number of our global collaborators who are joining us from Brazil and Colombia. Welcome, everyone, and thank you to our co-sponsors, the Office of Global Public Health, the International Institute, the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies, and the Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning. We're fortunate to have 2 speakers today, both from the University of Michigan's Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning, Professor Paula Pimentel Walker, and Professor Lars Junghans. Paula is an associate professor in urban and regional planning, where she researches how disenfranchised communities engage with urban governance. She also evaluates the significance of participatory institutions in planning socially and environmentally just cities. Lars is an associate professor of architecture, and his research focuses on the development of high-performance buildings with a comprehensive view of all aspects of the building's thermal behavior, including passive design, active strategies, and renewable energy systems. At this time, I'd like to turn the program over to Paula.
It's very nice to be here with you today. Lars and I are very grateful on behalf of our team. Thank you for this opportunity to share our work. And also thank you for our partners in Brazil and Colombia that are here with us today. So our work is on heat and health, and it's meant to be a partnership with residents and partners that work with self-built homes, providing support for families living in conditions of self-built homes. Our team here at the University of Michigan, it's myself, Lars, Aline Cotel at the School of Engineering, Gabriel Harp here at Michigan, Maria Arquero de Alarcón at Taubman College, at the School of Public Health, Karina Grunland and Marie O'Neill, and at the School of Social Work, Mieko Washihama and Odessa Gonzalez Benson. And we would like our team to reflect the diversity of the teams on the ground working with informal housing in Brazil, which are public health workers, social workers, lawyers, architects, and urban planners. Also, thank you for our sponsors listed below and our research assistants here at the University of Michigan. So this presentation will first start with the societal relevance of our questions, the research approach we take, and then we'll go into discussing research sites and analysis and simulations and next steps. Extreme heat is a global health emergency, and it's going to impact billions of people that will be at a greater risk of preventable death and illness. However, this extreme heat will not impact us in a very unequal manner and in different geographies. So those people living in informal settlements and in rural areas are at a greater disadvantage, and because they will have a harder time being ready to fight and combat extreme heat events. Heat in South America, among all of the climate change impacts, gained more prominence this past year and this current year of 2024, with new studies demonstrating that actually of the climate change impacts, it is heat even more than landslides and washouts that kill people. So very new resources demonstrating that in Brazilian urban areas, heat kills 20 times more than landslides. Also, unfortunately, given to record high temperatures in Colombia, we have had there extreme fires, and it has impacted populations living in informal areas. So how do we have these groups prepared? How can we better support people living in informal settlements and rural villages to combat heat? This is a 2020 progress report from the United Nations. These findings are 2020, but are before the pandemic, and they demonstrate that rather than improving in our goal of lowering the proportion of urban population living in slums and informal settlements, we have regressed in this target. In sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, we have stayed stable, meaning we are not making progress on this target, which results in greater exposure to the increasing heat waves that face the population. So what happens in informal settlements and rural villages is that the homes become indoor heat traps. And people living in rural villages and informal settlements have very few places that they can go to escape the heat, such as cooling centers. Our first research is about attempting to understand what passive cooling options have the potential to lower indoor temperatures and improve thermal comfort. What are good candidate options? So in order to pursue that, we need to conduct what my colleague Lars conducts, thermal and fluid analysis. But even before we do that, it's important to understand the cultural context of construction, the socioeconomic constraints that lead people to build their homes, and then the institutional apparatus that can support passive cooling strategies. Our second research question is about, once identified through thermal analysis and fluid analysis, what would be potential strategies? How can we work with residents themselves in co-designing these strategies in ways that will make them implementable and self-implementable, like the self-built homes themselves? On a second stage is a collaboration with governments and civil society organizations to support and facilitate this housing upgrade towards passive cooling strategies. Finally, we aim at securing funding to implement the selected strategies and evaluate them. So these are the steps of our work, and engaging with ethnographic construction, the ethnographies of construction on the ground, spending time with families as they increment and build their homes. Then is the modeling and simulation, the analysis of the potential strategies, and where we are working now in São Paulo and Burkina Faso is also stage 4, which means workshops with construction workers from the settlements, with technical advisory firms that provide support for informal settlements and their upgrading processes. We believe that passive cooling strategies, they look good on paper, but they are still today meant to serve formal buildings. They are based on standards from the global north, building standards from the global north, modeling parameters also from the global north. And when they are applied in the global south, they also focus on middle income formal construction houses. So we would like to join others in this movement towards analyzing and revising building regulations and planning standards so that we can better support housing construction in precarious settlements. From the community point of view, they possess their own knowledge, their vernacular building knowledge, even in urban areas, that they have, through generations since urbanization, established ways of construction that work in the local institutional and cultural context. So we would like to work with them in then building these potential guidebooks on passive cooling strategies. So the sites of our work: São Paulo in Brazil, specifically Ocupação Anchieta, a land occupation, In Colombia, we work with the Alcaldía de Bucaramanga, and we work with Luz de Salvación. And in Burkina Faso, my colleagues Gabe and Lars work with the Heidelberg Foundation in Lima. Some of our partners in São Paulo, one special partner is the Union of Housing Movements. It's a housing movement that focuses on upgrading tenure security, and it has a strong branch also that focuses on self-management housing construction. We also work with technical advisory firms, especially for this particular project, Piabiru, who has been working in Ocupação Anchieta as well. In Colombia, we work with the University Industrial, and we work with Universidad Industrial de Santander, a state university, and we work with the Alcaldía to promote this research. In Burkina Faso, it's the Heidelberg University. So São Paulo. São Paulo is a city of inequalities, and it's not surprising that we have persistent inequalities in the city. So here is a data from 2023 from the highest income district, Moema, and you can see infant mortality 2.6, while in Grajaú, the district we work, it goes to 12. Percentage of brown and black population in Moema, barely 6% of the population. In Grajaú, basically 57% of the population brown and black. And average life expectancy in the city of São Paulo can vary by 20 years. So if you live in Grajaú, your life expectancy is 61, 62, I cannot actually see the screen right now. And so the average in São Paulo is 71. So we can see these striking inequalities, which are very persistent. Here is the diary of Maria Carolina de Jesus from 1958 that has been translated to English. Maria Carolina de Jesus was a favela dweller, and she says about São Paulo, I classify São Paulo this way. The governor's palace is the living room, the mayor's office is the dining room, and the city is the garden. And the favela is the backyard where they throw the garbage. So unfortunately, these inequalities persist. And another picture you have is a 2022 picture that made news in BBC about also single mothers like Maria Carolina de Jesus struggling to raise their children while they build their neighborhoods. So developing passive cooling strategies for Grajaú and São Paulo in general, Grajaú district, is difficult because we do have seasons, and this can be a challenge. Ocupação Anchieta, where we work, is an informal occupation. So it's a land occupation. In 2003, they occupied the area, and this occupation has been densified. It is linked to lower incomes, housing crisis, and employment, and rising employment, that all these new occupations started popping up in the city. So here is a complete census we developed with Piabiru in late 2019-2020, and you can see that the average monthly per capita income is $114 in Ocupação Anchieta. This is much lower than the legal minimum monthly wage in Brazil, and it cannot even pay for rent in a consolidated and well-located informal settlement in the city of São Paulo. Basically, if you apply all their income, it's not enough to pay rent. Very young population, headed by women, and also a very small household size, average 3 household size. So in terms of self-declared diseases, it's not very different from the average of the city: hypertension, respiratory diseases, and diabetes. In terms of construction materials, we have pretty much wood is almost 90% of the wall materials. And likewise, metal sheet predominates the construction typology of this settlement. The history of collaboration, the settlement started in 2013. In 2017, we started a group of University of Michigan students and faculty started building this cultural, the headquarters of the association. The residents are very proactive in partnering with the University of Michigan and also partnering with NGO when they were threatened by evictions because of environmental impact on water springs and the creek. They partnered with NGO Teto to relocate homes away from the water springs. We have engaged with a network of partners in the south region of São Paulo, including Ocupação Anchieta, to move policy and to push for better policies for informal and precarious settlements. This led to this meeting of favelas and occupations with policy manifesto reports. But in the end, for Ocupação Anchieta, the city has not entered in the area, and they have developed a self-managed, collectively managed, grassroots-led upgrading project. We can see here some of the typologies of homes in Ocupação Anchieta that we have documented, and we are focusing on 2 houses. So the first house is Jenny's house, and it is a wood house with recycled materials. So in documenting the ways that Jenny built her house and then keep up with renovations required for the house to remain standing, we can see already in the selection of materials that she found these plastic materials in the garbage to make up the walls. And in our inventory of materials, one of the recommendations we are working with is, for instance, keep some distance between the materials and the wooded walls, the plywood, and also perhaps search for possibilities of recycled tire. That would be a material that has, is better for the humid climate of São Paulo. So Jenny is a classic example of incremental housing construction. She started living in a very small shack, 3 by 3 meters, and then started upgrading that shack, and has never changed the plywood of the walls, always finding new recycling materials to improve that house. Her dream, of course, is to build a brick home. It's everyone's dreams to have a brick house. And that is already under construction in the back of her home, of their current home. So among the strategies that she uses is plastic, fabric. I think might have some, at the corner here, some glass wool that she uses to also prevent wind in the winter. So we identified 17 materials, most of them recycled materials. Yes, you can see here that in the roof, you have glass wool, and this glass wool is used to prevent wind from passing through in the winter time. So this ethnographic field work took place in the winter months. Then we are conducting a preliminary analysis of the heat sources in the house and what are these heat sources and what can we do to make this house workable for all seasons. Here, in terms of openings and air circulation, which can be very important for some climates in improving indoor temperatures, we have the idea that she can block this or she can fully use the windows and then adapt seasonally her house. So our second home is built and planned by Piabiru. Brazil, and especially São Paulo, has many, if you will, nonprofit organizations that are technical advisory firms formed by architects, social workers, sometimes lawyers and planners. And they work on these upgrading projects that have limited support or no support from the government. And here they secured funding for the construction of 43 homes that are starter core homes, and they match the relocation of homes necessary for the upgrading plan that we mentioned to open ways for sewage and drainage tubes. So Claudiane lives in a mandatory starter home as of December 2022, and she lives off sporadic work. She lives there with her 2 children and mother. This is our 2 wonderful research assistants that were in the field with me. So when Claudiane just moved in, she moved also in a shack very similar to the one of Jenny. And then she started building up her home. So Pia Biru has developed some recommendations on how she could increment and expand her house. She has already expanded her house towards the backyard with the leftover materials from the shack that was demolished. Her shack was demolished to open a road in the settlement. And then she has her own plans on how she wants to expand this house. What we have noticed here is that wooden house and plywood houses, people use their windows a lot in those houses. They find it cheap and useful. And in the brick homes, in the masonry homes, they use their windows they don't use their windows as often, and they block their windows. So Claudiane's home has less recycled materials than Jenny, but it still has that shack extension. And here are some of the materials that have been used. So for Claudiane, we also spent time there over the winter time, and she was mostly concerned about keeping her house warm. But there were very few hot days in that winter where she was complaining a lot about the lack of air circulation and the heat. And you can see here how the windows have been blocked for privacy. This is a living room, bedroom combo. So this is Ocupação Anchieta, and now I'm moving into Bucaramanga. So Bucaramanga, Colombia, we worked in Luz de Salvación. Here is the eternal spring weather, but it is less variation, but also hot and humid, and climate change will impact this area a lot with rising temperatures. So Luz de Salvación 2 has about 400 houses, 1,000 inhabitants. And unlike the occupations of São Paulo, did not start spontaneously. It starts through illegal subdivision of rural land. So this work is in partnership, like the previous work with the Residents Association. This is in partnership with what we call in Colombia Las Juntas de Acción Comunal, the community action boards, who officially represent the neighborhood with the municipality, and then with the land legalization department of the municipality, Bucaramanga. This work started through a partnership between the University of Michigan and the United Nations, where we analyzed the legal and policy frameworks for climate change in cities in Colombia. So from the get-going, but this is Julian, the lawyer that has worked a lot with land legalization programs in Bucaramanga, and the residents of the neighborhood, plus the students from the University of Michigan. So all our community engagements were designed to identify climate change adaptation needs. And through this transect walk, we did identify fire and heat as one of the main issues impacting them. These are some of the houses. Most of the homes here are brick. Light construction is really the exception. So this is the house of Marta. Marta's greatest struggle is to secure water, make sure that she has water during the day, because water does not only arrives to her in her house at night time. So storing water is one of her main preoccupations. The settlement also faces issues with flooding, and community install adaptation strategies on their own. This is the house of Don Antonio. And when Don Antonio bought this plot, he had to hire a bulldozer and 8 trucks to carve the terrain in the wall to be able to build his house. So in this area, sometimes when you buy land informally, what you are buying is the face of a wall that you then need to bulldozer to build your home. So Don Antonio, one thing that both settlements figured out very fast, if it's their first time, no longer able to afford rent in formal areas and then having to build their own homes, is that they have built their homes with the roof and ceilings too low, and that makes it unbearably hot. So once they realize the roofs are too low, they use complementary materials like you can see in these pictures to elevate the roof and make it a little bit less hot. So the concern for the brick construction is very strong in Colombia as well. Therefore, when it's time for the roof, there is no money left to get the roofs done. So once I did an analysis of the materials available, many of the houses buy their roof sheets used. So we have to go to used stores, and the local stores, they only provided these rough, uncoated metal sheets as a roof. You cannot even buy a coated sheet that's better for indoor temperatures, keeping the heat out. They are not even available in the local construction stores, and only the local construction stores will enter in an informal settlement to deliver construction materials, which is another challenge, right? So even if they were to have the resources to buy materials, roofing materials that are more suitable and insulated for the hot weather, they don't have the delivery available to them in the local construction stores. This is just another house, and this house is very common in the settlements that we visited in Colombia, is that there is a space between the wall and the ceiling, which is very good for air circulation. Another construction. This is just another example of how wood is not the main material in the settlements that we visited in Comunas 10 and 11. So there is very little shade in the public spaces, and residents do what they can to create extra shade in the common areas. One common concern is that kids don't have a place to play that is shaded, and the sun is just very strong. Another issue that actually several of the Juntas de Acción Comunal mentioned to us during field work was that the community centers, they are well built, and in appearance they have all the features for like large windows and air circulations, but they are still extremely hot. And even some of the UNICEF programs happen through these areas. And so even children sick, needing medical attention will be seen in these community centers. So we are also working with some recommendations to improve community centers and, improve the availability of community centers as cooling centers, places where people can find refuge during heat waves. But now we are going very fast through Burkina Faso, where the partnership with Heidelberg University has already even implemented some of the interventions. And the climate there is already very hot, and it's going to become even warmer. The villages construct their house with mud and tin roof, or a mixture of mud and straw and mud for the roofing. And now I'm going to pass to my colleague to explain some of this work.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna Paula. So I will give my perspective from the engineering work or collaboration. So what we are doing actually is to model these settlements and put it into the computer. The computer is going to simulate the temperature and humidity levels and the comfort level inside these computer-designed settlements. So we want to analyze what is when we are going to change a certain strategy, for example, to have a second roof or to have a cavity wall. Which kind of influence does it have to the indoor humidity and temperature, and also to the comfort? So what we did for all these climates is at first to make a climate analysis, which you can see here in our temperature and psychrometric chart and similar analysis. But when we are going to do these, we have to find a way how to evaluate our results. Just looking at the temperature curve and then to compare might be not the right solution. So we have to find a different way to analyze. And what we are doing so far is to use as a comfort evaluation, which is used in the built environment in general. So we are using the so-called International Standard Organization 7730. There's a, in general, accepted comfort evaluation. What you have to know is that this comfort evaluation uses the air temperature, surface temperature or radiant temperature, relative humidity, and air velocity. You also have to give as a metabolic rate and the closing factor. And then it will provide you, like you've seen in the slide before, an evaluation. It's predicting, is the temperature or the room comfort, is it neutral, or is it slightly warm, or is it too warm? Yeah, so it's going to give you for each hour in the year, for each situation, a certain evaluation of it. So what we did, we have used this equation and we this over the year. Here you can see this is a different way how the building code is going to evaluate. This is the so-called adaptive comfort field, but this one is only looking for the temperature, for the air temperature. This does not include humidity levels or air velocity levels. However, this has the advantage that it is also going to look at the external temperature. Yeah, so this one is the only one which is going to look at the external temperature, because people are going to accept higher temperature levels inside when also the outdoor temperature is higher. So what you should see when we are going to use these comfort levels, this is mainly designed for North America, Europe, and Australia. So this is not designed for the warm, humid, or hot, arid climate. Yeah, but we have not had another chance. So we have used these, and then we put all these different interventions into our computer. We started with a baseline, and then we changed a lot of things. For example, cavity wall, second roof, coating, wall coating, bigger windows, cross ventilation, and different things. And then we tried to evaluate what is the outcome. You can see we also tried to find solutions with a small wind turbine on the rooftop, cross ventilation. We have also been able in our partnership not just to use thermodynamic simulation tools, but also fluid dynamic simulations. As you know, higher air velocities can increase the comfort level to a certain level. And we tried also at the computer with these different settlements how we can increase the air velocity. It's just another intervention, so different measures at the roof, at the wall, and also combinations of all these interventions. This is a typical result for one of these interventions, the second roof. What you can see here is the comfort evaluation for each hour during the year. So it's going to look at, the baseline, which we defined together, and then also the improvement, which is here light blue. And you can see our goal is to shift these percentage of hours to the more neutral way. So here you can see that the baseline is hot, but the improvement is less hot during the year. So the predictive evaluation shows it's less hot. So we have shifted these evaluation a little bit more to the better side. Yeah, this is the way how we evaluated our interventions theoretically. Also, we have seen the surface temperatures, the room temperature, and so on, as also a part of our evaluation. The main outcome is something you can see here. You can see the evaluation of these different comfort fields again. slightly warm and so on. And we have looked at these at different typical days or weeks even during the different seasons. And here you can see the baseline and the second roof as an intervention. You can see that we have improved here the comfort level, at least in the afternoon hours. Yeah, so we are going there to evaluate these step by step and to find a conclusion for our interventions. And here you can see actually the same, but this is a combination of different interventions. And there's also, as you can see, the improvement in the comfort evaluation over the year. In the meantime, we also have these only looking at the night time for sleeping at night, right? This was a demand, So we have also developed these ideas so far that we can only look at the night time or at the daytime. So this is a little bit more sophisticated these days. And here's a comfort evaluation according to this classification for different interventions, so to compare different outcomes of our simulation work. Yeah.
Yes. So just to summarize where we stand in our long endeavor here, we are aiming, of course, we understand the political and institutional constraints and believe strongly that the government must support adequate housing. But at this first stage, we are also focusing on a direct connection with construction workers and families that build their own homes. So having the popular educational materials ready so that it can be easily distributed to workshops, through meetings that, will make this information readily available for people. Also, countries, the progress towards adequate housing is not even, it's very uneven. So, for instance, even from the first time I went to Bucaramanga, there was a great influx of immigrants from Venezuela that has lowered a little bit now. So economic crises that make the number of people moving into new occupations in São Paulo or social programs that are able to house them elsewhere. So this progress is uneven. And we would like at this moment, in a first step, to work with the residents, their associations, and the NGOs and governments that are providing support for informal settlements to build that strength and that knowledge base for, implementing passive cooling strategies. We are also working towards, in this inventory of construction materials available, we are also thinking of policy issues related to tax breaks, to the acquisition of recycled materials from local industries that would make better materials available for families. And right now, in the months of May and June, we will build this manual of passive cooling strategies with São Paulo and Bucaramanga. Eventually, what we would like to see is that international organizations and governments, they include the point of view of self-built and precarious homes into their heat adaptation plans, thinking of these communities as their priority, since they are in the settlements that are most exposed to extreme heat and with lower resources to combat those, to face those heat waves. Also, we know that alarm systems starting taking place in all countries. We know that heat kills more in the spring, in the extreme heat waves that happen in the spring when the bodies are not ready yet for that extreme weather event. In terms of Burkina Faso, our colleagues are already working in the implementation phases and evaluation phases. And yes, and my colleague Maria Arquero and I are looking forward to traveling this summer and continuing this work. Thank you so much for having us here today. It has been a pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much, Paula and Lars. Your presentation was very informative And the work you're doing is so important in addressing housing solutions that address extreme heat in communities, especially those in informal settlements and rural areas. We do have a little bit of time for some questions that were submitted, so we'll just move into that. We have a question from a public health student who is interested in local climate resiliency in cities in the United States. And the student asks if you've done any work or know of any work with unhoused or people who are living in informal structures in the U.S. And if not, what lessons can we learn from your global research and apply in the U.S.?
Well, we have colleagues in our team that have worked here in Michigan with low-income housing, Karina and Professor Mary O'Neill. And here in our program, we have Larissa Larson that has been working on these issues here and also in Africa. So not specifically with informal constructions, but they would be the same idea would be very applicable, for instance, for the new authorized camps, like for people that living on the streets in the West Coast. Some cities are formalizing those settlements also for some informal housing that takes place in the rural areas in Texas, colonial housing. So yes, I do think that there are some lessons that can be learned about extreme heat and self-build more precarious homes in the U.S. as well.
It depends a little bit on the climate. Here in Michigan, there's completely different requirements than in Burkina Faso, for example, or in South America, right? So we have here more the heating problem, while our research is focusing a little bit more on the cooling problem. Yeah, but there are definitely ideas how we can avoid the heating problem as well.
One important thing, as Lars mentioned, is that it is very material-based and very climate-based. And the only thing we see crossing is the importance of working with the communities, right? Learning from their construction histories and their constraints.
Great, thank you. Another question we have is, how do you handle potential barriers or resistance to the adoption of these solutions in the communities you're working with?
We have not yet faced that problem. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so we are familiar. This is a question which we are discussing in the bigger group all the time, actually, you know. Our goal is to find good solutions, not just to present our results, but to work together with them. Yeah, so that they're involved in the process. That's our goal. That's why Anna, Paula, and Maria are going there to speak with the people, and we are always welcome to get their opinion and their experience as well, right? It's also this experience what they have, so we can also learn from them, and to also create this environment as collaboration together with the communities.
We also know that different informal communities have different priorities. And then if a particular community is not at that moment prioritizing issues of climate change adaptation or heat, then, it's not the right partnership for that moment, right? Maybe they need to see how it works elsewhere in other neighboring communities first in order to get excited or see the value of it. So yes, we basically prioritize the communities that are excited about finding the solution or exploring, ways to improve their homes in that manner or to build in a different way.
Great, thank you. So that kind of answers one of another question that someone had about focusing on co-design solutions in your work and how that can work, working with others helps build engagement and with the communities. So another question though related is then, beyond heat reduction, what other benefits do you believe your solutions can bring to these communities?
I think that our partners, like the Union of Housing Movements or the municipalities in the municipality in Colombia, I think that they are already doing a lot of work to improve holistically informal settlements, to make them a part of the city, to advocate for better policies, better access to water, better access to sewage, which are, basically important issues to reduce infant mortality and increase life expectancy. But I think that the heat issue is an issue that what can be learned from it is maybe, especially probably more in Brazil than in Colombia, a little bit of a neglect to the housing itself, right? Because a lot of the efforts have been towards the infrastructure, meaning that like we need water and we need sewage, and that's all true, right? But the housing structure itself needs improvement, and it's part of overall approach. Some good things that governments have realized is the need for public spaces in the areas that can house people from multiple informal settlements, that can help, with shade and entertainment, and just leave, a place to be beyond the settlements that are often overcrowded and without public space.
There's also the bridge, to climate change, to increase human comfort by doing architectural measures to have shading, for example, will help to increase the comfort. This means that we need hopefully less mechanical cooling or dehumidification. And this can help, to reduce the operating cost and therefore also the CO2 emission for building operation. So this also, this part is very important for our research work. So to avoid that people will use the mechanical cooling system very often, so that the number of mechanical cooling is reduced in general.
Which also lower electrical bills for the settlements that have to pay electricity. Some countries have electricity prepaid by meter, so having to decide if you're going to cook on an electric stove or if you're going to spend turning on the fan, right?
Okay. Well, I think we have time for one quick question, and then we have a couple of announcements at the end. But there's someone who asked a question if outer space radioactive cooling technology could be investigated in the future.
Well,
yeah, okay, that's for me. So I'm actually, my general research work is more looking for very passive methods. Also my other research work is very much looking how can we really reduce the amount of cooling and heating in buildings. A lot of strategies what we can do technically. However, you have to know that some of these highly technical solutions is probably not the right way how to react to these settlements in this research work, because this new technology, any building control, for example, the people needs to get familiar with these, and this needs to be used in the right way. For example, a ground channel, right, an earth channel, would be in Burkina Faso would be a good measure, would be a good strategy. However, it's only working if there's a damper which is going to control, to avoid that the hot air will get in, because, very likely the people are not removing the damper at daytime, So this means that these type of strategies are probably not the right way. We are also looking for solutions with material which is on the place, to use cardboard, to use membranes which are available on the site, And so we are looking at cost-effective solutions in this case.